So you guys all know that I've already reviewed Brian Michael Bendis' entire run on Daredevil previously on my channel, and I wanted to start reviewing Ed Brubaker's run, which picks up straight after the end of Bendis's. This is volume 1 of the Daredevil. It's actually called the Ultimate Collection. So like Bendis's run, Brubaker's was divided into 3 pretty substantial trade paperbacks, the first of which is this one. Now, Brubaker writes it on his own, and taking over art duties are Michael Lark and David Arger. David Arger, I don't think contributed as much, but they basically work together, but the majority of it's drawn by Michael Lark. So, as I mentioned, the book itself, the run picks up right at the end of Bendis's, where Matt Murdock is now in prison for being outed as the vigilante Daredevil. And going into this, I was interested to see how Brubaker would deal with that, because essentially Brian Michael Bendis has written him into a corner. You know, where do you go with your main character incarcerated in prison? So Brubaker manages to pick that up and make it interesting. I mean, he's in prison with Wilson Fisk, or the Kingpin, and they have a very sort of interesting relationship, as they always have. You also have a mysterious figure dressed as Daredevil running around New York beating people up, so that is a sort of mystery subplot added into the first trade. The artwork itself is very moody, not unlike the artwork on the previous run. As you can see here, it's sort of very dark and brooding. That's actually Frank Castle, the Punisher there. The reason I wanted to show you this page is that basically the Punisher reads in the newspaper. This isn't really a spoiler, it's just a very nice little touch and flourish of comedy. The Punisher reads in the newspaper that Matt Murdock is in Rikers prison and has been involved in a scuffle. Decides he needs to get himself locked up, so walks across the street and just breaks somebody's neck and lets himself be arrested. There are little flourishes like that throughout this first trade that, you know, add a little bit of a sort of nudge nudge wink wink sense of humour. But what I will say is that I actually, up until about the halfway point, well, maybe throughout this trade, I sort of struggled with it, and that's not because it's poorly written or it's bad, because it's not. It's great, and honestly, when you read the following 2 trades, it really sort of builds on the groundwork that's laid in this one. But it's just that Brian Michael Bendis' run, I thought that run was fantastic, and if you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that. With this run, it's sort of, the first trade is more of the same. It's more of the downbeat, dour, nitty gritty, borderline depressing Daredevil, and the moments like that with the Punisher, you know, they're so few and far between that I found it to be a bit sort of trying to get through this first trade. And like I say, it's just because it's so similar to Bendis's. It's not as good as Bendis's run. Bendis has a certain way of writing dialogue and character interactions, which is very unique and something that I love. I mean, Brubaker does his best, but you just feel like you're being repeatedly beaten over the head with all the crap things that are happening to Matt Murdock, and Bendis just about got away with it, and he, you know, had the good sense to like have little sort of mini arcs inside his trades that maybe jump backwards in time, you know, and full of flashbacks and stuff like that, and kept it fresh throughout, whereas Brubaker, it does feel a little bit too serious at times, and that wouldn't be a problem if you didn't come off however many issues Bendis had just written, but it doesn't feel like it's its own beast in this trade. I will be reviewing the other 2, and like I said, when you read those, it definitely picks up and sheds new light on this one and stuff. But yeah, like I say, it was just a bit like, oh, I feel like, you know, reading something a little bit more fun at the moment. So that's why it's taken me so long to review this one. I mean, the plot, needless to say, you know, Matt Murdock doesn't stay in prison forever. You know, I think halfway through this trade he's out. He starts to investigate who it is who's been dressed up as Daredevil in New York, and then travels to Europe to find the person responsible, and there's a few twists and turns along the way. The book really picks up towards the end when you find out who's behind, you know, everything that's been happening throughout this trade and all the bad things that have been happening to Matt Murdock, and that's all interesting, and it's a perfect perfectly good twist. There's a certain character who was killed off in Bendis's run who doesn't stay dead, and it just goes to show as well, you know, with big comic publishers and big characters like Daredevil, you know, characters don't stay dead, and it just sort of reminds you of that fact, and you think, oh, you know, it's sort of sacrificed a pretty good personal moment that Bendis wrote for the sake of bringing a character back. So there's a few little niggles I have with it. I feel like I'm really criticising this book, but I'm not, in the sense that it's a well-written book. The artwork's good, the character stuff's good. It's just a little bit too dour, especially when it's the start of a new creative team on the book. You know, I felt like it wasn't different enough to feel fresh, basically. So the first volume, I do like the fact it starts off in prison. I thought that was a brave choice. I like the way they write around that and how they get Matt Murdock back into the real world, and the mystery elements are all fine. It could just do with a little bit more humour, a little bit more fun. Maybe at times the artwork's a little bit too dark, because that's one thing that the artist who drew Bendis's run did. You know, the art style sort of varied. You know, in flashbacks it'd be a lot more colourful and stuff like that. So you just need a little bit more variety in tone, I think, with this. But the book itself is a good start to a run, and had you not just read Bendis's, I probably will have enjoyed it a lot more. As I say, I will be reviewing the other two trades in this run, which do pick up the pace. So don't get me wrong, if you've read and enjoyed Brian Michael Bendis's run on Daredevil, you will enjoy this. But what I would recommend you do is have a break in between, because what I did was read all of Daredevil up to date, non-stop, back to back, and it became a little bit trying at the beginning of Brubaker's, but have a break in between reading Bendis's and Brubaker's and you'll probably enjoy it a lot more. It is a good book. So Daredevil Ultimate Collection Volume 1 by Ed Brubaker, I recommend. I don't recommend you dive into it straight away after Bendis's run, and like I say, I will be reviewing the other two trades, so watch out for those videos.